Good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Wallace, Superintendent at Maine Township High School District 207. I want to thank you for taking the time tonight to join us at this YouTube live event to discuss our schools and our plans for asking the taxpayers for a referendum on the November 6th ballot. We're very proud of District 207. We want our community members to be very proud of District 207. We have a long history of innovation here, but just this year we were named one of the 25 most innovative districts in America. And we're proud of that innovation. We're proud of the student success. We think we've attended to teaching and learning in the schools at a very, very high level that all the community can be proud of. Tonight we're going to review the presentations that we've done in the communities throughout the last few weeks and months. And then we'll take some time at the end to have questions and answer questions to the best of our ability and spend as much time as we need to do that. So with that, we'll get into the presentation and give you a chance, if you haven't seen the overview, to go into the presentation overview and talk a little bit about our schools. So District 207 probably is the only district in North Cook County, the only one we know of certainly, and probably you can go up to Lake County, DuPage County, West Cook, that hasn't done significant things to its buildings in a number of years. And in fact, our last referendum ask of the community was 45 years ago. In the meantime, we've operated an early 20th century building, Maine East, to mid 20th century buildings, Maine West and Maine South, and taken good care of them. We've had systems that boilers, for example, that had a 30-year lifespan that we got 53, 54 years out of. But in the meantime, the world has changed. Our schools were built in a particular era for a particular purpose with particular design elements. Our thinking about school safety, security has changed. We have aging mechanical systems, many original mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems to our buildings. And frankly, how we do school has changed. So the three schools you see in front of you, the center one is Maine East High School, opened up in 1930. The school on the left is our second high school, Maine West High School, opened up in 59. And then on the right side is Maine South High School, opened up in 1964. They all have significant designs original to the buildings, and in fact, when we have homecoming events and class reunions, a common comment that we get from students, former students, is it looks just like it did when I went to school here. And that's a common thing. We hear it over and over again. But take Maine South, for example, in the bottom corner. If you're familiar with Maine South, there are large curtain walls in the front and the back of the building that have the original single pane glass from 1964. Over time, the windows themselves have contracted. It's very hard to actually seal them off and keep air out of there, and you can imagine what window walls are in Chicago in February. So our schools were definitely designed for a different era. This picture offers a contrast of the differences. The picture on the left is an actual picture from Maine East High School, and in that day, the industrial model, that's what school looked like. Students in rows, everybody was there at the same time, same place, and got the same message and was expected to try to do the same thing. The picture on the right is a recent picture, and it's an example. While to the layman it looks like just a group of students around a table, it's actually a strategy called cooperative learning. And this collaborative teaching and learning is really essential to understanding how we do school differently today. The research behind cooperative learning, and we have more cooperative learning teacher trainers than anybody in the world, the research behind cooperative learning is that a group of learners is more powerful than an individual learner. That's relatively intuitive to most of us. But that's one of the foundational strategies that we have in our schools. One of the signature things about District 207, and many community members know this, but for those that don't, our seniors graduated last spring, probably the first seniors in American history to go to high school where every teacher every year had an instructional coaching plan. So we've put a lot of thought and a lot of emphasis in raising the quality of teaching in every single classroom. And that has design implications. When you employ strategies that are significantly different than those being modeled on the left side of the screen, that has design implications. And that's just for what students do. In addition to that, school today looks much more like a medical model, where each student is really seen as an individual. We have as much detail about them as possible, and we track variables in real time so that we can attend to students in real time. We look at them and their personal learning journey. We look at any social, emotional, academic needs, and we try to attend to those in as real time as we can to increase our chances of student success. Speaking of student success, our success at all three high schools is the highest it's ever been in the district history, despite the fact that we have a higher percentage of low-income students and a higher percentage of students of minority than we've ever had in the district. We operate 2 majority minority schools today, and yet in 2008, about 30% of our students were in our accelerated, advanced placement, and dual credit courses. Advanced placement and dual credit or college courses. Today, that's about 60%. So just in 10 years, we have doubled the percentage of students in our most rigorous courses. And what I'm particularly proud of is that our low-income students and our minority students, who typically many times didn't get into those tracks, are in there at record rates, and they're succeeding in significant numbers. So we're really, really proud of what our students are doing today. We believe our community is proud of what our students are doing today, but we simply have schools that were designed for a different era, and it's time to really, really take a deep look at what our schools are asking of our students today. So what we've done significant building assessments. The building assessment, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing assessments are on our website, main207.org. You can find that, and literally every piece of data that we've shared that we have out there is on our website. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing assessment alone is over 150 pages, and that gives you a good detailed sense of the work that we've done and the systems that we've looked at to try to make sure that we are prepared and understand fully what's on the horizon for us for our schools. We form study committees, and we've done surveys. So in particular, we sent surveys to staff, to students, and community members, and we use those surveys to really inform our thinking about how to design our schools. Our students and our staff go to school there, they teach there, they learn there, and that's a really important audience to inform the work that we're doing. So we use that over the last year and a half or so, working with our architects to come up with some designs. We started probably at a more aspirational place, and over time, as we did the cost calculations for that, we've scaled back, and we tried to find what is that fine line between being aspirational enough and yet coming to the community in a responsible way that presents a path that we believe is something that our communities can support. And that's the plan that we have in front of the community now. So the common themes that emerged from all of our feedback were infrastructure. Again, with an early 20th century building to mid 20th century buildings that have original systems, those things have lifespans. As I said earlier, our track record is in the last few years we have had boilers that we've replaced that had 30-year original expected life. We got 53, 54 years out of them, and that's pretty consistent with how we've taken care of our buildings. Safety and security. No secret to anybody in the audience tonight. Our thinking about safety and security is much different than it was when these school buildings were built. Maine East, if you know or don't know, Maine East literally has a rifle range in the basement. There was a place in time in our history when students carried rifles to school because we had a riflery club. The world has changed a little bit since then. And in all three of our buildings, we have students who have to walk outside to get to another part of the building. It's a design element that in 2018 you just simply wouldn't and shouldn't have in place in any school. So that safety and security is a really important thing. In addition to that, to enter our schools, you really only have to get let into one door, and then you're in school. The state-of-the-art way to do that, a more recommended way by law enforcement and security experts, is to have a double vestibule we would put one of those in each of our buildings to really try to increase the safety of anyone who entered into our schools, and obviously we're protecting our students and our staff. So that's a big piece of the themes that emerged. Collaboration zones. Again, the picture that we illustrated earlier, that's what school looks like. That's how we do school. And we just think that we can refresh our buildings a little bit to have design elements that accentuate our ability to do more collaboration. And the collaboration isn't just for students. A fundamental piece of how we do school today is in problem-solving teams. So again, it's that medical model where if anything is going on with your student, whether it's academic, whether it's social, emotional, whatever the needs are, we have professionals that problem solve. We bring in problem-solving teams, and we try to do it in real time, be responsive right now when students are in need, whatever the need is, and not only identify problems, but then attend to professionals who can help solve problems, work with students, work with families, and then follow up and do whatever maintenance is necessary to make sure that your students are as well served in our building as any students in any high school in America. And we're really serious about that work. And there is design features that can accentuate that very important work. Instructional environments. Again, our students don't sit in straight rows anymore, and so we're looking at furniture and the flexibility of the furniture. We're testing certain things. Our normal classrooms are standard industrial sized classrooms, about 640 square feet. We don't have designs that we're presenting to our community to expand our high schools greatly. But what we are doing is looking at our furniture footprint and, for example, asking what is the percentage of students, if given a choice, that would want to do a stand-up desk like many adults are using now in the workplace. I use one, frankly. And removing 10 chairs out of a classroom just made your classroom bigger by using subtraction. So we're looking at design elements like that, and in many other places to be more creative with our space. And then finally, an important concept that has always been important to the district and the Board of Education at District 207 is equity. This plan is very equitable between the three buildings. It meets essential needs of all three buildings, and it does it in a way that is respectful to the communities and the students that go to each of our three terrific high schools. So what we've done, we put together a task force last year, and I want to talk a little bit about this process. The task force was set up intentionally so that it would report to me as a superintendent, and so that I could work as a buffer between the task force and the Board of Education, and that the recommendation would be made to me as a superintendent, and then I would in turn have a decision about what recommendation to pass on to our Board of Education. Our task force toured all of our buildings, and we've had many building tours for community members as well. They looked at all of the facility upgrade options. They looked at all of the financing options. They looked at all of our feedback that included mail surveys, that included a scientific phone survey, that included getting to hear all of the presentations and hear feedback based on that. Based on all of that work, the task force recommended to me, both in May and in June of last spring and early summer, that we pass on a recommendation to the Board of Education to ask the taxpayers for a $195 million bond on the November ballot. And I made that recommendation to our Board of Education in August. They adopted a resolution, and so that's where we are now. Again, the recommendation was based on all of the things that we've talked about, based on looking at our master's facility plan, knowing that we have aging infrastructure that simply is beyond the capability of the district to fund, to fully take care of. It's based on the results of the surveys that we got back from the community. It's based on the task force recommendation made up of community members from all three high schools. It's made based on trying to improve student safety in our buildings, trying to improve teaching and learning in our building, trying to improve accessibility in our buildings. One key concept is that accessibility. All three of our high schools were built before the Americans with Disabilities Act was a federal law in the 70s. So, for example, at Maine East in particular, we have students that simply can't access parts of the building because they were built in a time when students in wheelchairs, for example, or students with significant cognitive or physical disabilities didn't attend school. Today, I'm very proud that we have literally a full distribution of students, including every student with disability that would attend a public high school in America. We have very rich and rigorous programs to attend to every student's needs every day to the best of our abilities. Accessing school is a big piece of that, and so that's an important thing. Finally, the ballot question is on for November. Our Board of Education, who really has thoughtfully considered all of the elements and understands, as we all do, the magnitude of the question that we're putting in front of the community, felt that it was important that this question go to the community. The way that funding school improvements is set up in Illinois, it's almost always exclusively given to the taxpayers as a referendum question, and that's really where this is. The last time that we've done a referendum, we did one in '67 and then a phase 2 in '73. So it's been 45 years since we've come to the taxpayers for this question. The improvements break down like this. So approximately $82 million of the improvements are just the mechanical, electrical, plumbing issues that are really non-discretionary. These are things that we simply must do. It's only a question of when we have issues here, so we really have to attend to these things. And so that's a full third of the project is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing alone. Then school-specific improvements, and you'll see some common themes here. All of them talk about the collaboration zones as we discussed. Accessibility is a big piece of this. So having either it's elevators or other means for students to get from one part of the building to another is an important thing. At South, there is additional space in the Fine Arts wing, not significant, but just some pop-outs so that we can store equipment. Right now, we're using classroom space to store equipment because of the heavy storage need in Fine Arts. And we have different issues at different buildings. At East, in particular, it's accessibility. At South, we have the highest enrollment in the smallest footprint. And so in the Fine Arts wing at South, we've got the highest number of students accessing the smallest space. So we do some things there. At Maine West, we would do all of the similar types of things, increase safety, collaboration zones, work on instructional environments. But in the referendum, the previous referendum in '67 and '73, Maine West was supposed to get a field house. Maine East had a field house, and the Maine South field house was added in 1969. There's a picture in the 1968 yearbook with a bulldozer showing where the field house is going to go at Maine West. That never got built. So from an equity standpoint, we would add that field house. That would be the largest build. All the rest of the construction is really working on existing space. So there's not a lot of grand addition here to any of our buildings. It's really refreshing and modernizing and attending to some of the issues that we've discussed so far. So the total project is just over $240 million. Of that $240 million, the district is asking for $195 million in bonds, and it's doing something that is actually really unprecedented. And you can look at all of the districts around us, each of whom have done significant upgrades to their buildings. Few, if any of them, have committed the types of resources from their reserves that District 207 is committing to this. And nearly $46 million of reserves is committed to the project. In addition to that, the district is committing to cover any cost overruns beyond any construction costs. And we'll work very hard to make sure that we don't have cost overruns. One of the things about District 207, and we've been very fiscally conservative and good stewards of the taxpayers, probably one of the few governmental agencies that in recent years has actually attained a AAA rating. So our bond rates will be as favorable as anybody's out there. We are very competitive with anything that we bid, and we feel like we will be fiscally responsible with this. But that said, the way that these projects are funded, the money can only be spent for one thing and one thing only. It can only be spent for the building projects. There's no other avenue for this money to be spent, and that's a question that's kind of come up. So we are addressing that now. In addition to that, everything that we do, the building plans, the projects, the bids, all of that will be public document. We'll be very transparent with all of that process and all of the things that happen on the building, so that the taxpayers understand and can trust that the money that they've given us for these projects go directly and exclusively to these projects. This slide is one that we hope can give some perspective. District 207's operating cost per pupil is about $19,800. And the schools listed below that, Evanston High School, Libertyville's Vernon Hill, Northfield 225, that's the Glenbrooks, New Trier, Highland Park Deerfield 113, and then Niles 219. That's our conference. So that's the CSL conference, and this is our market. This is the league that we compete in academics and athletics. We're very proud of having the lowest operating cost. We feel strongly that the education that we provide is on par with anyone's. And again, we're proud of the track record there. However, and our families who travel to these other high schools know this because I hear from them frequently, how significantly improved all of those schools in our conference are compared to the District 207 schools. A portion of that increase in operating expenses for the other schools is because they've all done significant building projects and passed referendums to do those. Even if we were to pass this referendum in District 207, we will still have the lowest operating cost in our conference. So I want to put that in perspective. I think that's an important thing for our taxpayers and community members to know. This is our market. These are the schools that we compete against, and in everything, academics, athletics, and frankly for staff. So that's a little bit of perspective that I hope that our community can look at and at least be proud of the track record that we've got on that. All of this material is on our website, all of it. And so this is a calculator for what would it cost me as an individual taxpayer. Roughly the estimate's a rough quick estimate is about 3% on a total tax bill. It's around, I think, $91 per 100,000 of EAV, but you can take your main township line item, that's the line item in yellow. We are in 9 different communities, which is a significant advantage when we go out for a referendum. The cost is shared over those 9 communities, and roughly in most of our communities, District 207 is about 25% of a property taxpayer's property tax bill, roughly, give or take a few tenths of a percent. So you can take your actual line item, times it by 12.96% to know the impact on your bill specifically. We know this is a big ask, and again, we've really narrowed the projects down from where we started as we really looked at cost drivers, and we've tried to find what we think is the appropriate, being aspirational enough. This will not take our schools in terms of the designs ahead of the schools in our conference, but it will certainly close the gap. And we will have schools that from all facets, from safety and security, from accessibility, and from instructional design, that will look much more like a modern high school that is, frankly, all throughout the North Cook footprint. So that's the tax impact. Right now, the question is on the ballot for November 6th, and we are out talking to community members 2 and 3 and 4 times a day, frankly. We still have open houses at our schools. One of the things we really encourage taxpayers to do is come out and visit our schools. What we have found is even when folks are against the idea of the projects, once they walk our schools, at least they understand. And we have some videos on our website, but we are happy to take anybody for tours of our building, to talk to anybody, to go through the projects, to discuss in any manner the projects and why we believe these are important things to do for our community. So it's on the docket for November 6th, and we are so grateful that you have joined us tonight, and at this time we will come out and try to look at some questions. We encourage you to submit questions through the chat function on the right of the screen. If the YouTube chat is not working for you, there's an alternative place to submit questions. That additional chat function is listed in the description below on the YouTube channel. You can access alternative chat by scrolling down on your screen and clicking that link. And so we will get to some questions here in just a moment. And again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time tonight to visit with us and hear the presentation. So the first question is, can the referendum funds be used for other things like salary? And the answer is a hard no. It's not, that is not even an allowable expense. And we know that question's been out there. Fair question, but the funds can be used only for the building projects, and that's the nature of these types of bonds. So they go directly to the building projects, and in fact the way that it works, once you issue the bonds, you actually have 3 years to complete the project. So you have to complete the projects in 3 years. We would probably stage those in different stages. The other question is, what happens if the referendum doesn't pass? And that's a fair question too that we've gotten. We obviously are attending to, doing everything we can to give the community members the best information possible so that they can make an informed decision. And we believe strongly in what we're asking, and frankly, we believe in our communities. We believe in our communities, and we trust the process. We trust the democratic process. We think we've served our communities well, and we believe that our community members recognize that. But that said, if it doesn't pass, we will regroup. We will continue to get some feedback, and what I can tell you is the path we're on is not sustainable. One of the questions we've had is, well, why haven't you done more before this? And that's a fair question. The simple answer is that we have done a lot. We spent about $60 million in the last 11 years just doing upgrades and fixing things in our building. We're always roofing. We're always putting asphalt down on our parking lots. We've had a couple of HVAC systems go out in the last couple of years that we've fixed. As I said earlier, we've replaced some boilers that had 30-year lifespans. We replaced them in year 53 and 54, and we've replaced them with better technology that saves us money. So we've actually done a lot. The problem is we have 1.5 million square feet of school space. We have 3 physical, really large plants, and our ability to fund those upgrades is actually beyond our capacity. And we're using what capacity we feel like we've got, which is the 46 million, to do the projects. Here's one of our fundamental problems, and it's a function of tax caps that came in the 90s. When tax caps came in, you were limited to raising your levy by the Consumer Price Index. Most people know that. What a lot of people don't know is there was a second consequence of tax caps. You were limited on the amount of debt you could generate for your buildings by however much debt you had. District 207, just prior to tax caps, actually had no debt. It's counterintuitive, but the districts who had been, operating with little to no debt actually kind of got punished by tax caps because you were limited now to the amount of debt that you could extend. We actually bought a little bit of money prior to the tax caps and did a small addition on the A wing at Maine South High School, but we have a debt capacity of $1.6 million a year. So think of it this way: we could do 16 over 10 or 32 million over 20 years, but again, you can see the scale and the scope of our projects. We simply don't have the ability to access the debt, even though our credit worthiness is north of 330 million. The only way that we can access debt is to come to the taxpayers, and so we're happy to do that. We think it's fair, we think it's appropriate, and we think that our track record speaks well for what we've done. We are literally the only high school district in northern Cook County, and that's all of our market, that includes 211 and 214, that has waited this long to do significant upgrades to its buildings. And so kind of to our earlier question, yeah, we would regroup, but the cost for doing more won't go down over time. It will only go up. And so that's why we feel strongly that the case that we're making has merit, and we feel strongly that it's one that the community members should consider. It's the only questions I'm seeing right now. Okay, so one of the questions is why did the district wait so long to make these updates? Why were they not spread out over the last 20 years? And I actually really just answered that question. It's because the debt capacity. In order for us to have done it over the last 20 years, there's one of two ways to pay for buildings. And one way is if you have a debt extension capability, you can borrow money over time to pay for those. So for example, if in 94, 95, we had a debt capacity of $5 million, we could have borrowed 50 over 10 or 100 over 20. And back that long ago, 5 million probably had the buying power that 10 million does now. And so we haven't had the capacity to have been doing more over 20 years because we would have had to go back out to referendum and do it. Now, one could say, well, why didn't you go to referendum? And I can't really speak to that. I've been superintendent here for 10 years. I've been talking to the board about this for the last 5 or 6 years after we did an updated mechanical, electrical, plumbing survey and audit when I first began. And so we just haven't had the ability to do more over the last 20 years because of the inability to access the debt. So that's one of the things. The facility assessment was conducted by White Architects, which is one of the architect firms that we used. We also have an engineering firm, Alara, that has helped us, and they're a very well-known and highly regarded engineering firm. So we've had, we think, really good and professional work. And again, on that question, those mechanical, electrical, plumbing assessments are on our website, main207.org. So get on there and you can read all of those for yourself and take a look at what's in there. With the feds raising the interest rates, do you foresee any issues or added cost to the bonds you're proposing? And that's a fair question. I think we modeled our bonds higher for that reason, knowing that there was a chance that interest rates would be going up, and so we modeled that. Obviously, the advantage that we have is the AAA rating. So we're going to get bond rates at the lowest bond rate, and we will aggressively shop those rates, and that's something that's just not a negotiable with us. So we will get the lowest rates we can for the taxpayers. The interest rates are a little bit outside of our control, and the other thing is, if this passes in November, there's a 12-month to an 18-month design window. The total projects, you're probably looking at 4 to 6 years. So, and we won't borrow the money all at one time. It'll be in stages. So there's also the possibility that in the next 3-4 years that the rates go back down. So that's a little unpredictable right now and a little outside of our control, but a fair question, and that's really where we're at. Please speak to hiring of 2 interim principals. Why don't you put one of the 4 assistant associate principals in that position? That's a function of trying to make the best decision for the school, knowing that everything that we know in terms of moving forward. We are bringing a recommendation to the board in November to name a new principal for the following year. And those decisions are, made with the idea of making sure that school operates as effectively and efficiently as possible. What other proposals were put forward to the board besides a $195 million project? So a couple of different things. So as I said earlier, we actually started probably in a more aspirational place, and we scaled that back significantly. But with the task force, we had the $195 million project and a $135 million bond project. Both of those included the $46 million that the district would put in. The $135 million project took a lot of things off the table, from safety and security, sprinklers, for example. It would have eliminated sprinkling, the sprinkling systems that we'll put in with this project. It would have taken out significantly some of the design elements that we have modeled in the $195 million project. So the task force, after listening to everything, made the recommendation, and really strong recommendation, to select the $195 million project. There's been much discussion within the state about a property tax increase of 1%. How will this affect the project? Actually, it won't. What that increase would affect is our ed fund levy. And that's a separate levy. That's really pays most of the operating costs, salary, benefits, and things like that. This particular levy, this particular bond will be bonded at the payback cost. So that's a little bit different. Good question though, and it's reasonable to apply that. But that 1% levy or any levy would be affecting our ed fund levy, and so it would be that for salary and benefits. Is it true that your bonus is, well, first of all, I don't have a bonus. I work on a performance contract that's merit pay, and so it's based on achieving goals, and most of them are academically related. It isn't how much money's in the reserve. So good question, but it isn't that at all. Now I am responsible for the fiscal condition of the district, and we're proud of that. Again, we are a district that has achieved a AAA rating for its fiscal operations. We annually achieve the highest rating from the Illinois State Board of Education in how we operate our schools, in how we manage our money. And we have external audits on an annual basis. Those can also be found on our website. So we feel like we have attended to managing the resources that our communities give us in a fair and responsible way. With the new collaboration zones and new resources for students, how will the district be monitoring students in these areas? Will District 207 need more personnel in the future? Great question. No, we don't believe so. First of all, the collaboration zones will be monitored, and we have existing staff that monitor now. So it's probably more a function of expanding some of those zones, and we've tried to begin modeling those already in the hybrid schedule, and so we don't believe that we're going to need more staff. And I'll give you one example that actually we talked about with some community groups yesterday. The field house at Maine West High School, someone asked that about that. But right now what happens, and it's a safety and security issue, when we have wing gyms at Maine West High School, if you're familiar with West. And what happens is we have to let people into the building to go to those wing gyms. So we have people inside the building at night going to all those wing gyms. But those wing gyms are cleaned and they're supervised now. What will happen is most of that will go into the field house, and those people who are currently cleaning and supervising will now be doing the field house. So it's more of, and those wing gyms then become academic space that's used during the school day. So we will still be doing the same work. We'll just be doing it in a little bit different place. But that's a great question. Since you have this 18-month design, are you worried about the fact that this project could escalate beyond the $195 million? We have a couple things. With the district reserves cover any increase, and yes, that was in the presentation. We've made a commitment for any cost overruns to pick up the cost of that, but we have modeled in this project knowing that we had a 4, 5, 6 year window where things would escalate. So we've built in models that account for escalating costs. It's reasonable to say over time the cost of these projects will go up, and so that's a good question. But we think we've modeled that, and in addition, we've made a commitment to take care of cost overruns as we move forward if we have those. And again, what we will do very, very diligently is try to make sure that we don't have cost overruns. Does the increase in the tariffs on construction products coming from overseas worry you or the planning committee for this project? Again, another fair question. Some of the things that are going on are a little outside of our control, and maybe a good thing on this is that even after November, if this passes, we have a 12 to 18 month design window. So a lot of things can happen, and I'm hopeful as anybody can be, that whatever elements are out there, that there's the appropriate corrections, and that doesn't happen. If that happens, it's happening to everybody, and so we will attend to the things within our control. That is the last question that we've got on our queue, but if there are any other questions, we will stay and answer some more. But great questions, and some of these are ones that we're hearing, and so it's good that the things that you're talking about and thinking about are things that other people are talking about and thinking about. We also have an FAQ on our website. A lot of the questions that were asked tonight are on the FAQ. We encourage you to go to that. We encourage you to keep submitting questions, because what we love to do is if we get questions that we haven't gotten, we add those to the FAQ, and then other community members who might have those questions can get on there and get their questions answered. And in addition to that, we'll, phone calls, emails, whatever, we will try to answer your questions directly. But then we also want to keep the running frequently asked question document so that we can keep updating that and make sure that if you've got the question, odds are others have the question too, and so that way we can keep people as well informed as possible. Again, thank you so much for your time. What I really appreciate and have the highest regard for our school communities is, in my 14 years here, one thing is absolutely clear. Our communities love their high schools, and I trust and believe in our communities. And I can't thank you enough for tuning in tonight and for participating in this democratic process. Again, if you need anything at all, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much. Good night.